My wife cheated while I was mourning my brother. 3 years after our divorce, she claimed her baby was mine. I'm 35 now, working as a financial analyst. I've carved out a solid career for myself at a reputable firm, and honestly, I've done alright. Family's always been a big part of who I am. I've played the role of the dependable older brother for as long as I can remember. Growing up, my younger brother Ryan and I were close, real close. We couldn't have been more different though. I was the cautious one, always thinking ahead, while Ryan had this wild streak. He chased fun wherever he could find it. But even with our differences, that never came between us. Ryan was a bit of a daredevil, sure, but he had a heart of gold. He somehow always found himself in the craziest messes, but when it really counted, he was solid. And no matter how carefree he seemed about life, I loved him fiercely. Then there's Chelsea, my wife. Well, ex-wife now. She's 35, and we were married for 7 years. From the outside looking in, our relationship probably seemed strong. We didn't have kids, and that was a mutual decision. Still, we had a comfortable life together, or at least that's what I believed. Everything turned upside down the day Ryan died. It was a motorcycle accident, one of those freak tragedies you never see coming until it's already happened. I was at work when I got the call. I remember that moment so clearly, like the air got knocked out of my chest. They told me I needed to get to the hospital right away. I drove there in a daze, praying the whole ride that things weren't as bad as they sounded. But when I got there, it was like stepping into a nightmare. The doctors explained that Ryan had lost control of his bike and hit a guardrail. He didn't even make it to the hospital, he was gone at the scene. They let me see him, but I could barely recognize him. He was covered in bandages, hooked up to machines, and they told me both his legs had to be amputated. There just wasn't anything left holding them on. I stood there in shock, trying to convince myself it wasn't real. But it was. It was painfully real. My parents were shattered. My mom just kept sobbing, asking over and over why it had to be him, why her baby. And my dad, who had always been the rock in our family, just collapsed in on himself. He was crying, trying to hold my mom together, but he could barely stand. I felt like I had to be the strong one for them. On the outside, I kept it together. But inside? I was wrecked. Chelsea was there too. She held my hand, whispered comforting words, and did her best to support me. At the time, I was grateful. I really thought she was being a good wife. After Ryan passed, I wasn't myself. I completely shut down emotionally. I focused all my energy on the logistics, arranging the funeral, helping my parents through the worst of their grief, doing anything I could to keep things from completely falling apart. I didn't have anything left in me for anything else. The funeral was a blur. I remember standing beside Ryan's casket, feeling numb as people came up one by one, offering their condolences. I was too drained to respond, too heartbroken to even think about how Chelsea might have been feeling through all of this. My world had been narrowed down to grief and survival. I spent nearly every day at my parents' place in those early weeks after the funeral. They needed me. And honestly, I needed them just as much. Chelsea tried to talk to me, tried to get me to come home, to open up about what I was going through. But I couldn't. I couldn't add anything else to what I was already carrying. The grief felt like this massive weight on my chest, and I couldn't bear to share it with anyone, not even her. After a few months, I slowly started crawling out of that dark place. I went back to work, trying to find my footing again. But something between Chelsea and me had shifted. We both felt it. That space that had formed during those months of silence and sorrow, it was still there. I didn't know how to bridge the gap, but I tried. I really did. I made an effort to reconnect with her, to go back to how things used to be before Ryan's death turned everything upside down. But Chelsea had changed too. She seemed distant, cold even. Whenever I tried to talk to her about what we were going through, she'd brush it off or steer the conversation somewhere else. It felt like she'd built this wall between us, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get past it. There were nights when I'd see her glued to her phone, texting, and if I asked who it was, she'd get defensive and say it was just a friend. She started going out more, saying she needed space or that she just needed to clear her head. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about it just didn't sit right with me. One night, not long after I started noticing all the strange behavior, I was home alone while she was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the table, and before I even thought about what I was doing, I picked it up to see who was messaging her. That's when I saw it, a message from someone named Mark. And let's just say the contents were graphic. Explicit, even. I took screenshots and saved everything to my phone, texts, pictures, videos. I was in shock. But I needed to be sure. I needed to know if this was just some flirty texting or something more. The next day, I hired a private investigator. It felt surreal, like I was living in some awful movie. But I needed answers. A few days later, the PI confirmed my worst suspicion: Chelsea was having an affair with this guy, Mark. They'd been seeing each other for months. When I confronted her, she flat out denied it at first. Got all indignant, like I was the bad guy for snooping through her phone. But I wasn't buying it. I showed her the evidence, every screenshot, every message. She just sat there in silence, staring at it all. And then she broke. She admitted everything. She said she'd felt alone and neglected. That I was too wrapped up in my own grief to even notice her. That she'd tried to reach me, but I kept pushing her away. And maybe there was some truth in that. I had been distant. I had shut her out. But never, not once, did I think she'd turn to someone else for comfort. She told me she met Mark at a bar one night when I was staying over at my parents'. Said she felt lonely, and he gave her attention that I wasn't giving her. One thing led to another. At that point, I didn't want to hear anymore. The betrayal was already too much to process. I lost it. I said things I'm not proud of, accused her of not being able to keep her legs closed while I was mourning my brother. She shot back, telling me I was an emotional void. That she didn't know how to reach me anymore. It got ugly, real ugly. After everything came out, I just couldn't stay in that house with her anymore. I threw some things into a bag and moved back in with my parents. When I told them what had happened, they were shocked. Honestly, I think their reaction was more about disappointment than anger. Chelsea tried calling, texting, she wanted to explain, to apologize. But I was done. That line had been crossed, and there was no coming back from it. I told my friends, our mutual friends, what she did. At that point, I didn't care how it made her look. A part of me wanted her to feel the shame, to feel even a fraction of the pain she dumped on me. She kept trying to apologize, over and over, but I couldn't forgive her. Not for that. The moment she cheated, she wrecked whatever was left of our marriage. Divorce was the only option. We got lawyers involved, and right away, it turned nasty. We fought about everything: money, the house, even the most ridiculous stuff like who would get to keep what furniture. Chelsea actually tried to file for alimony, claiming she deserved it because she was used to a certain lifestyle. I couldn't believe the nerve. After everything she did, now she wanted to take more from me? Then I found out she'd drained our joint bank account, cleaned it out. Said she needed it to live, but I knew what that was: just another jab, another way to hurt me on the way out. My lawyer pushed back hard, and eventually, we reached a settlement. I got to keep most of my assets, but by the time it was all said and done, I was completely drained emotionally, mentally, and financially. But she didn't stop there. Even after the divorce was in motion, Chelsea kept showing up at my office, making scenes in the lobby, crying, begging me to take her back. It got to the point where security had to escort her out. Word got around at work, and people started whispering. Folks who used to look up to me suddenly saw me as the guy with the drama wife who wouldn't let go. It was humiliating. I had to go through HR just to get her officially banned from the building. It felt like she was determined to ruin every corner of my life she could reach. After the divorce was finalized, I tried to put the pieces back together. I went on a few dates here and there, but nothing ever stuck. I was too broken, too angry, and still carrying around way too much baggage to even think about starting over. My friends told me to get back out there, that I deserved to be happy, but I just wasn't ready. Instead, I buried myself in work. I took on longer hours, extra projects, anything that could help drown out the memories and the bitterness. Slowly, the pain started to dull. The anger didn't burn quite as hot. I wouldn't say I ever forgot what she did to me, but I reached a place where it didn't control me anymore. I made a decision: I wasn't going to let that betrayal define the rest of my life. Through the grapevine, mutual friends, mostly, I heard Chelsea wasn't doing so well. Turns out Mark, the guy she cheated with, bolted when she told him she was pregnant. Just dipped. And yeah, I'll admit it, when I found out, I felt a cold, twisted sense of satisfaction. Karma, I thought. Life hit her hard. She was struggling as a single mom, barely scraping by. Financially, things were a mess. She lost the house and ended up in a small apartment. At one point, she even tried reaching out to me for help, but I didn't respond. Not a word. I wasn't going to play the savior for someone who threw me away. She made her choices, now she had to live with them. 3 years passed. A lot changed. My career really took off. I got promoted to a senior management role with a hefty raise and a corner office to match. I'd finally started dating again, and that's when I met Becca. She's 33, sweet, steady, thoughtful. Everything Chelsea wasn't. We've been together for almost a year now, and it's been good. Really good. Then, a few weeks ago, something happened that caught me off guard. A mutual friend of ours was getting married, and I got invited to the wedding. I almost didn't go, but Becca talked me into it. Said it would be good to show up, relax, see some old faces. So, I agreed. What I didn't expect was to see Chelsea there. As soon as I walked into the reception, there she was, standing by the bar. She looked different, thinner, worn down. There was this quiet kind of sadness hanging over her. Our eyes met, and we just stood there for a second, frozen. Then she walked over. She asked if we could talk, and even though every part of me was screaming not to, I nodded. We found a quiet spot, and she just let it all spill out. Told me how hard things had been, how she regretted everything. How Mark left as soon as she told him about the baby, how hard it was raising a kid alone. She apologized again, said she knew she had no right to ask for forgiveness, but she had to try. She even started bringing up the good times from our marriage. Little memories, sweet moments. Like she was reaching, desperately trying to find some small thread that could still tie us together. But all I could think about was the day I found those texts. I looked across the room and saw Becca watching us. Calm, patient, supportive. That's when it hit me, I wasn't the same man I was 3 years ago. I had rebuilt my life, found happiness again. I wasn't going to let Chelsea drag me back into that dark place. So I told her. I couldn't forgive her. Too much had happened, and the damage was permanent. I said I was happy now, that I'd moved on, and she needed to do the same. She tried to argue. Said she'd changed. That she could be better now. But I didn't budge. I'd drawn my line, and I wasn't crossing it. She started crying, begging. Caused a bit of a scene, honestly. People at the wedding started looking over. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her guilt me for something she did to herself. After the wedding, Becca and I talked. She didn't press me, didn't try to make me open up more than I was ready to. She just held my hand and told me she was proud of the way I handled everything. And that meant the world to me. Since then, Chelsea's tried reaching out a few more times. I've ignored every message. I'm not interested in reopening that chapter. I've got boundaries now, and I plan to keep them. I've moved on. I'm not going back. But now there's this new curveball, and I'm completely thrown. Just last week, I got a letter from Chelsea. In it, she told me something I never expected. She thinks the child might actually be mine. She said she didn't want to believe it either, but the timeline lines up. Now she's asking me to take a DNA test to find out for sure. And honestly, I don't know what to do. Part of me wanted to believe this was just another one of Chelsea's mind games, another ploy to wedge herself back into my life. But at the same time, if there was even a sliver of truth to what she was saying, if there was even the slightest chance that the child was mine, then I couldn't just ignore it. I felt like I had a responsibility to find out the truth. So that's where I've been, stuck in this place of confusion, trying to figure out my next move. Never in a million years did I think I'd be in a situation like this, and honestly, I've had no idea how to handle it. If anyone out there has been through something similar, I'd be grateful for your insight. And to those of you who've been following my story, thank you. I'll post another update once I have some answers. Final update. Hey Reddit, it's Chris again. First off, I want to thank everyone who read my previous posts and shared their thoughts and advice. I was really blown away by the support and the different perspectives people offered. It helped more than I can say, especially during one of the most stressful chapters of my life. So here it is, the final chapter of this whole saga. I hope this brings some closure to anyone who's been following along. To recap, a few years ago, while I was mourning the death of my brother Ryan, my wife Chelsea cheated on me. The divorce was messy and painful, but I eventually rebuilt my life. I found happiness again with someone new, Becca, and things were finally going well. Then, out of nowhere, Chelsea showed up at a wedding, tried to reconcile, and dropped a bombshell. She claimed her child might actually be mine and asked me to take a DNA test. At first, I was all but convinced this was another one of her manipulative games. But as much as I didn't want it to be true, the possibility was too big to ignore. I had to know. Becca and I sat down and had a serious conversation about it. She said she'd support me, but I could tell it scared her. I tried to reassure her, but if I'm being honest, I was scared too. Scared of what this could mean for us, for the life we were building. I also reached out to my lawyer to get some legal guidance. He told me to go ahead with the DNA test, but to do it through a third-party lab, one that neither Chelsea nor I had any connection to. That way, there'd be no question about the results being tampered with. I agreed. We set everything up, and then all I could do was wait. And let me tell you, that waiting period was hell. The tension between Becca and me started to creep in, even though we were both trying our best to stay grounded. Every time my phone rang, I get this tight feeling in my chest, thinking it might be the lab or worse, Chelsea. And Chelsea? She didn't make things any easier. She kept blowing up my phone with messages, asking if I'd heard anything, throwing out comments about how I needed to step up and get ready to be a dad. Eventually, I had to block her number just to breathe. But even then, she found ways to get to me, through mutual friends, emails, even showing up at my office again. I was on edge constantly. My work started to suffer. I couldn't focus. I couldn't sleep. It felt like I was stuck in a nightmare that refused to end. And just when I thought I couldn't take anymore, I got word that there was a delay with the test. Some kind of mix-up with the samples meant it was going to take longer than expected. I nearly lost it. I was barely holding on as it was. Chelsea, of course, used that delay to her advantage. She fired off a new round of texts, accusing me of tampering with the test, saying I was trying to duck my responsibilities. It was ridiculous, but it still got under my skin. I started snapping at coworkers, even at Becca. I didn't like the person I was becoming, but I didn't know how to stop it. Then finally, the results came in. I was at work when the email arrived. My hands were shaking when I opened it. And there it was, clear as day, I was not the father. The rush of relief that hit me was overwhelming, but it wasn't just relief. There was anger too. Anger that Chelsea had dragged me through all of this. Sadness for that child, who was being used as a pawn in her manipulations. And just sheer exhaustion from everything I'd been through to get to that answer. When I told Chelsea, she flipped. First, she denied it. Said the lab must have made a mistake, claimed I had somehow rigged the results. Which was absurd, especially since we'd used a completely neutral lab. But she wouldn't hear it. She was desperate, and it showed. For days, she kept pushing for a retest. Then, when that didn't work, she changed tactics. Started spreading lies. Telling people I was a deadbeat dad. That I had abandoned her and my so-called child. Even though I had proof I wasn't the father, the rumors didn't stop. My lawyer told me it was time to take legal action. So, we sent her a formal cease and desist, demanding she stop contacting me and stop spreading false information. We also began the process of seeking a restraining order. I really didn't want it to go that far, but at this point, I had no choice. She wouldn't back off. Of course, she ignored the cease and desist. She kept finding ways to reach me. Even showed up at my job again, demanding to speak to me in front of everyone. That was the final straw. My lawyers, now handling the restraining order, were making it official. All of this has taken a serious toll on my relationship with Becca. She's been incredible through it all, but I could see the stress starting to wear her down too. We had a long, honest talk the other night. She admitted she was scared, worried that this whole mess with Chelsea was going to haunt us forever. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. And I told her just that. I reassured Becca that I was in this with her, that I wasn't about to let Chelsea blow up the life we'd built together. But I also admitted how hard all of this had been, not just on me, but on us both. We needed to keep communicating if we were going to make it through in one piece. It wasn't an easy conversation to have, but it was real, and I think it helped both of us feel a little more solid, more grounded in each other. My parents, on the other hand, were crushed when they found out everything I'd been dealing with. They'd always liked Chelsea. Even after the affair, while they were disappointed in her, they never stopped hoping she'd change or find her way. But this? This went beyond anything they could have imagined. My mom was heartbroken. She kept saying she couldn't believe someone we once considered family could stoop so low, use a child like that, string me along, lie about something so serious. My dad, who usually plays the quiet, steady type, actually got mad when I told him about the DNA test and all the false accusations. He told me he'd always had a gut feeling that something was off about Chelsea, but he never imagined she'd turn into whatever this was. It's been hard on them, too, watching their son get dragged through this emotional grinder and feeling powerless to stop it. I know they're still processing it all, same as me. As for our circle of mutual friends, well, that's been a mixed bag. Some of them backed away from Chelsea the moment they heard what she'd done, especially once the truth about the paternity test and the harassment came to light. But a few seem stuck in this weird middle ground, unsure of who to believe, trying not to take sides. I get it, I guess. But it still hurts. I've had to come to terms with the fact that some friendships might not make it through this. Emotionally, I'm still trying to unpack everything. The betrayal, the mind games, the constant stress, it's all left its mark. I never wanted any of this to turn so toxic, but I also know it wasn't my doing. I didn't cause this. I just reacted to what was thrown at me. One of the hardest parts, honestly, is the guilt I feel about the child. I'm not his father, those results made that clear, but I can't help but feel bad for the little guy. He didn't ask for any of this. He didn't ask to be brought into a storm of lies and chaos. He's the one who's truly innocent in all this, and that thought's been sitting heavy on me. There's nothing I can do to change his situation, but it still gets to me. In the end, I made the call to completely cut Chelsea out of my life. No more contact, no more back and forth, no more chances. There's no salvaging anything with someone who's caused this much pain and destruction. I blocked her on every platform, and I'm continuing the legal process to make sure she can't come near me, my home, or my workplace again. This whole thing has been a brutal ride, but I'm grateful for the support I've had, especially from people here on Reddit. Your advice, your encouragement, even the tough love, it helped me see things more clearly and gave me the strength to make the choices that were best for me. So thank you. From here on out, I'm focused on moving forward, healing, building something new, something real, with people who actually care. And with that, I think it's time to close this chapter for good. Take care, everyone.